last year, I traveled to Chiang Mai, where there are many temples. Although I don't have any religious beliefs, I still followed the locals into some of them to take a look. When I arrived at a certain temple, I casually made a wish, hoping for a promotion and a raise when I returned. I promised that if my wish came true, I would come back to fulfill my vow and donate half of the increased income from the first 3 months. I didn't expect my luck to turn out so well when I returned. Not long after, several colleagues left one after another, either resigning or going on maternity leave. Soon enough, even my manager resigned. As a result, I was promoted several times within a short period, and my salary increased significantly. I was very happy about it. But at that time, I had long forgotten about the wish I made casually during the journey, let alone fulfilling it upon my return. To be honest, I couldn't even remember which temple I made the wish in. About 2 months later, strange things began to happen. It all started with frequent and abrupt power outages in my house. I contacted the property management, and electricians came to inspect several times, but they couldn't find any issues. Strangely, only my apartment in the entire building experienced this problem. Although the power outage lasted only about 2-3 minutes each time, it was very inconvenient to plunge into darkness and silence every day. Plus, I always felt like someone was watching me when the light is out. Then, one day, I was stirred from my slumber by the sound of keys fumbling at my door. Groggy yet attentive, I was wondering if some drunk had come to the wrong floor, or if it was my neighbor's door being opened. As expected, the sound of the door opening ceased quickly. But after about 10 seconds, just as I was about to go back to sleep, I heard 3 heavy knocks on my bedroom door. This jolted me awake. I jumped out of bed quickly in scare. However, when I turned on the light, there was nothing in the room. My biggest concern at that moment was the possibility of a break-in. So I carefully inspected the surroundings, ensured all doors and windows were securely shut, before reluctantly returning to bed. Before going to bed, God knows what I was thinking. I took out my phone and snapped a picture toward the direction of the living room. I uploaded it to IG with a casual tone, saying, "Invisible guest, where are you?" The next morning, I was surprised to see a flurry of likes and comments on the photo, with everyone expressing how creepy it looked. Upon closer inspection, I found the coat rack in the living room was like someone standing in the darkness. Additionally, the tilted hats on the rack made it seem as though the person's head was unnaturally skewed on their shoulder, adding to the unsettling vibe. The more I looked at it, the more unsettling it became. Hastily, I deleted the post, along with the one from my phone. Then, the same thing happened on the following night, and every night after, I would hear the sound of keys turning in the lock, followed by knocks on my bedroom door. I contacted the property management to check the surveillance footage, but they found nothing. It wasn't until the 5th day that I couldn't take it anymore. I invited a friend over to keep me company, and that night, nothing happened. However, as my friend was leaving the next evening, the strange noises resumed. Some friends suggested it might be the creaking of old pipes, or the sound of wood contracting and expanding due to temperature changes. but I was certain. It sounded like the crisp tapping of fingers on the door. That's when I made the decision to buy a camera and aimed it towards the door. The following morning, I nervously checked the footage. To my relief, there were no strange shadows or eerie sounds captured. Yet, there was a fleeting moment when the front door trembled slightly, followed by my bedroom door swaying, as though someone had entered from the front and walked into my bedroom. It aligned perfectly with the time of the peculiar noises I had heard. Afterward, I couldn't bring myself to remain in that house any longer, and quickly moved out, forfeiting the house deposit to the landlord. Fortunately, after moving, nothing strange happened again. However, misfortune persisted. Not long after, I received notice that my department's performance was too poor, and the entire department was being dissolved. Employees were given the option to resign or take a pay cut and transfer to another department. One weekend, while tidying up my new home, I suddenly came across a small Buddha amulet that I had bought during my travels. It was then that I remembered the wish I had made at the temple. I hastily pulling out my phone to do the math, and realized that the deducted deposit and various moving expenses amounted exactly to half of the salary increase I had received over the 3 months. Later, I contacted a medium. After assessing the situation, she chuckled softly and assured me that the issue had been resolved, as the necessary price had been paid already. However, she advised me not to make casual wishes ever again in the future.
This incident happened during my trip to Southeast Asia. My husband and I have been married for several years, and we've been actively trying to conceive, but without success. We've undergone some tests, but nothing seemed to be wrong. I could only reassure myself that perhaps the timing wasn't right. This year, my husband and I went on a vacation to a Southeast Asian country. Just as our journey was nearing its end, we heard some locals mention a temple, said that it's got the efficacy in granting offspring if you pray in there. Since it wasn't far away, we decided to visit the temple with a mindset of giving it a try. On the day we visited the temple, we encountered a couple as we were leaving. They seemed strangely attractive, almost like vampires. Both of them were strikingly pale. The woman had very large eyes, wore bright red lipstick, and had multiple ear piercings, while the man possessed large black orbs and a tall, slender frame. I couldn't help but checked at them a few more times, and found that both of them were staring straight back at me too. I quickly looked away, opting not to dwell on it. That evening, upon returning to our hotel, we unexpectedly saw them again in the elevator. The woman greeted us warmly and initiated a conversation about the temple we had visited earlier that day. It turned out we all shared the same struggle, which made me feel a sense of camaraderie. We engaged in conversation, and later that night we all dined together at the hotel. Contrary to their austere appearance, the couple was quite talkative. We enjoyed a pleasant evening chatting and exchanging recommendations for tourist spots. I even confided in them about our infertility issues. Before the end of the dinner, the woman pulled out a golden necklace with a Buddha image from her pocket. She told me that the temple we visited during the day was indeed miraculous. They had faced similar struggles but had conceived shortly after visiting last year, so they had returned to express their gratitude. Now, they wanted to give me the blessed amulet they obtained from the temple. When I accepted it, the woman instructed me to recite a phrase she taught me, saying, "I am all open to you, sincerely accept you. Please come to me." She explained that it was a ritual taught to her by the temple's monks, and only by reciting this phrase would the amulet be effective. Honestly, I found it somewhat absurd, but seeing her earnestness, I did what she said. That evening, we returned to our hotel room with the amulet, and a series of strange things started. That night, in the midst of a half-dreaming state, I felt suffocated and completely immobilized, and my entire body was numb, rendering me unable to move. Then, I heard a woman's voice, speaking rapidly in an incomprehensible language right next to my ear. The next thing I know is that my husband shook me awake, saying that I had suddenly started convulsing and speaking in the local language. It dawned on me then that the voice I had heard was actually my own. However, we didn't dwell on it much at the time. My husband even joked, "Wow, picking up a new language after just a few days?" The next day was our last day there. As we prepared to depart, an incident happened. The elevator suddenly plummeted from the 11th floor to somewhere between the 8th and 9th floors, which scared us to death. Fortunately, we weren't injured, and hotel staff quickly rescued us. But the most terrifying thing happened during the time we waited for rescue. Initially, the staff had come to pry open the elevator door slightly before heading back to retrieve tools. Since we were stuck between two floors, we could see people passing on the 9th floor through the gap above the elevator, but their legs only. And then, two faces appeared at the gap in the elevator door. It was the couple we encountered yesterday. Somehow, they had come to the 9th floor, bending down to peer inside through the gap from above. With their heads almost touching the ground, they maintained this posture, staring at us with eerie smiles. Typically, in such circumstances, if one sees familiar faces inside the elevator, there might be expressions of surprise or some comforting words exchanged. However, they seem to have known it was us in the elevator all along. They just quietly stared at us with those large, unsettling eyes. Just then, the maintenance workers returned. The couple didn't say anything, just stood up and quickly left. Soon after, we left the city and returned home. The next day back home, while I was cleaning the windows, I fell off the ladder and cut my hand. Then, my husband was hit by a reversing car at our doorstep, luckily with no serious injuries, but he still broke his leg. It seemed like a string of bad luck was haunting us. That night, as I was browsing the photos we took during our trip, Ten came across some pictures we had taken at the temple. There was a beautiful big tree in the temple courtyard, so we set up the camera in distance and took several shots in a row. As I reached the third photo, I suddenly noticed the couple we encountered before was also in the picture. They were standing in the shadow of the tree, not far from us. Though the photo was blurry, I couldn't mistake those pale faces and the bright red lips. However, when I turned to the fourth photo, they were gone, as if they had appeared and disappeared out of nowhere. It was only then that we belatedly realized something was off about the couple. I hurried to retrieve the amulet the woman had given me, and to my horror, I discovered that the once golden necklace had turned pitch black, the once serene Buddha image now exuding an unsettling aura. I was tempted to discard it, but my husband stopped me and asked to endure a little longer. He explained that given the couple's elaborate efforts to approach us and their insistence on reciting incantations to accept the amulet, it wouldn't be so easy to get rid of it. After a while, we sought the help of a renowned medium, recommended by a friend who was from that country we traveled to. The medium examined the amulet with a serious expression and mentioned how fortunate it was that we hadn't thrown it away, as the situation could be much worse if we did. He told us that while some temples enshrine genuine deities, others harbor malevolent forces. These entities might respond to your prayers, but they would demand a heavier toll in return. He advised us never to pray indiscriminately in uncertain circumstances. Subsequently, the amulet remained in the medium's possession, and our lives gradually returned to normalcy. Yet, I couldn't shake off thoughts of the mysterious couple. Had they too received the amulet from someone else? What did they pray for, and what had they lost in return?